computer. Okay. So over my lifetime, I have learned that physical challenges are a great way to move myself and other people forward. This is particularly true of women because we get undermined around taking up space and pushing ourselves physically. When I hear someone is trying to empower a group or particularly women, I think, okay, forget that. They're already powerful. They're inherently powerful. We are inherently powerful. We just need to remove the systemic, social, cultural norms and barriers, as well as individual barriers, so we can show how powerful we are. So today I'd like to share some of what I've learned with the goal of inspiring you to consider using your body even more than you already do to overcome mental limitations. And this is a friend of mine on top of a mountain or a pile of rocks. So it's a little ambitious, my plan for what to cover, but I have been able to go to workshops specifically around women and physical power. I have done strength training ever since I was introduced to it. I have walked more than 20 marathons. I did this silly experiment called a treadmill desk race. Last July, I walked for 12 hours in San Francisco. I have acted powerfully around my health, and I made a list of movies for you, as well as people and groups. So maybe one thing you could do to stay motivated is make sure you're being in contact. So I would ask you to put into the chat, maybe use physical activity or exercise to relax, de-stress, hang out with your friends. But how have you used your body that has been a challenge that makes you know that you are really powerful? So if you've given birth, that might be one example. I pushed a baby, came out of my body would be one example, but maybe you've done uh, you've overcome an injury, you have done a triathlon, something that you could say, oh my God, my body showed me that even though this is what I think, I didn't think I could do this. My body said, oh, yes, you can. So anything like that, put that in the chat. And if it doesn't occur to you right away, hopefully will inspire you. So I talked about those workshops for women in physical power, and they're part of a community called peer counseling. So kind of the hippies came out of the 60s, this idea that you could get people together and listen to each other. And then that would help break some of those mental limitations that actually come a lot from the external. But at one of those workshops, the first one I was at, we all got around a small car and we picked it up. Yep. A bunch of women stood around a car and we picked it up. So that forever changed what I thought women could do together. We also played a lot of outside the US, it's uh, American football. We got messy, we got dirty. We jumped off high places if we weren't able to do that when we were young. We wrestled. Many of us had never wrestled before. I got to do a chest press. So I'll show a picture later, but push a heavy weight off my chest, something I had never done before. And this went against the general trend of pushing out boys and holding girls close. So we pushed ourselves as girls and women to take more risks with our bodies. And anybody who was raised female generally gets kind of like, oh, careful, careful message. So I'll say another point that I took apart. So when you go to a swimming pool and you jump off, some people need to go up climb the ladder and jump off around physical activity. And some people have been pushed their whole life, even as girls and women, that they need to stand at the bottom of the ladder and just shake and feel and not do as much. So depending on how you were raised, if you were pushed, you might need to rest. And if you were kept from taking challenges, might be good for you to challenge yourself. So I find some people say about lean in, oh, I'm tired of leaning in. Okay, the lean in message is not necessarily for you. Like you are not the typical female, or we would have taken over everything and we would have solved it, because a lot of us are not getting that same activation message. And if you do need to rest, there's a really good book called Rest is Resistance. So I said that one of the most powerful things for me was strength training, weightlifting. So again, there's a little bit of a backstory. I had the good fortune in my 20s to have a mentor named Mary. And she said, people in my part of the United States, the middle, have a lot of fear of humiliation. So we don't do things because it would bring up all of these feelings like, oh my God, like shame and humiliation. So she said, make a list of all the things that you feel like would be humiliating, and then start with the easy ones. So kind of like put down a list of scary things and then start with the easiest scary things. And I thought, oh, doing push-ups in front of people would be really scary, even though I had seen people doing that. So that led me to teach body pump as at the YMCA, YWCA, and I taught it from at 6 a.m. early morning, twice a week for 6 years. You can imagine I gained a lot of confidence, and it ultimately got me into public health. So the leader of Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg, who started it, was also a group fitness instructor. So put in the chat, how do you feel about heavy weights? How do you feel about picking up a suitcase and putting it in the overhead compartment on a plane? How do you feel about carrying a big thing like dog food or something that's heavy? What has been your experience with lifting heavy things? So throw that in the chat if you're willing. And we can also talk about it at the end. But I think you might be surprised because in the gym where I go, the women are all using machines and the men are all using what are called the free weights. So this is a picture of Scott Davies. He is a doctor in pulmonary medicine, and we became push-up partners, and it was really great. He taught me to do push-ups 50 at every corner of the gym. Just a wonderful person. So if you've paid any attention to sports, women are particularly good at endurance. So I also have done a lot of endurance activities. Like I said, walked about 20 marathons. It's been really great. The Lean In community actually had a walking group, and I have finished marathons with many groups. These are some of the pictures, but there's more. And what's great is they give you a big old medal at the end, and then you can wear it for a long time and tell everybody, oh my God, I walked a marathon. So 26 point, I'm sorry, I didn't translate it to kilometers, but it takes about 6 hours if you're fast, and 8 hours is usually the maximum you can take depending on the marathon. And I don't generally train, just make sure I go into it without any injuries. So on a daily basis, I walk on a treadmill. And so when I met Justin Higgins on FocusMate, who you see doing his thing here, he said, let's make a treadmill desk race. And so we did, and we did it 3 times. And people showed up, and we all walked together for some long period of the day. And it was silly, and it taught me to slow down, actually. All right. When I was in California, this is a book by Colin O'Brady called The 12-Hour Walk. And he says that you should take a 12-hour walk to challenge your internal messages. And so I did that. I thought, perfect. That's exactly what I want to use my physical activity for. So I happened to be in San Francisco for the Lean In conference. This is the morning, and I made a video. If I had more time, I would show it to you. And I got to see so many beautiful spots north of San Francisco. I started in El Cerrito, north of San Francisco, walked east. I can tell you more about it at some point, but I just wanted to show you the photos. You're not supposed to talk to anyone, of course. Duh. Linda, is this a good idea, my path? And the woman said, yeah. And then the forest ranger said, no, I'm going to arrest you if you go the way Google is telling you. So it was good. And I have all kinds of tips like frozen grapes. They're all in the notes for the slides. It was just stunningly beautiful. Like, people are not exaggerating when they talk about California being beautiful.
And then you have like a minute left.
Okay, perfect. So it was really beautiful. Not a hiker, so you got to carry a lot of stuff though. It is kind of a pain to walk for 12 hours. And what I did was just ask someone for a ride when I got kind of lost, which was great because then I went to Berkeley, which is also very beautiful. But you get a chance to there was like a fig tree, and they put out a sign basically saying, help yourself. But the self-limiting belief that I challenged was, I can have a better life. And then this page has all my tips for how to take a 12-hour walk, which is, of course, he doesn't talk about this enough. Find out where the bathrooms are. So, so that's one of my tips. But it was a really great experience. I did make a video. If I had more time, I would show you this video. I will put the link in the chat to the video, or yeah, I'll put the link to these slides. And here, oh, whoops, I somehow wanted to skip this one. So I have been hearing my whole life, but when you hit your late 40s and 50s, it's very hard to not gain weight. And so many women talk about that. And so I decided in my late 40s, I would lose weight in preparation for menopause. I'd never heard of anybody doing this. And I think it came from acting powerfully around my health. And I also know Mari Ruddy, who has type 1 diabetes, just wrote a book called Extreme Healing. It just came out. And so I would say there are lots of ways to really take charge of your health. There's something called somatic coaching. We are going to, the date on there is have Mari Ruddy speak to our group. And then again, around staying motivated, here are some movies, people, and groups. So when I was a teenager, I saw a BBC documentary about factory farming, and that's how I became a vegetarian. So I knew that I'm kind of influenced by media. And Ava, I'm good on the time. So I think it's important to see these images. So the former mayor of my city, she saw the movie Terminator 2, and then that inspired her to do pull-ups. So that's what the graphic is there. I saw the movie Dune 2 years ago. It got me to start meditating. And Diana Nyad is in the left-hand corner. Get this, 64 years old. She swam 110 miles, 177 kilometers from Cuba to Florida. It took her 53 hours. So a 64-year-old woman swam for 54 hours, which is pretty much that endurance thing. And then I want to say two other movies that just broaden. It's not just about physical activity, but also sexual harassment in the workplace. This is a coal miner in northern Minnesota who sued the company for not protecting her. So it was way back in 2005 that I organized some women to see this movie. And then Cheryl Strayed wrote this great book called Wild about grieving her mother's death. She grew up in Minnesota, then she moved to the Pacific and Pacific Northwest. She did the 1,100 mile Pacific Crest Trail, which is 1,770 kilometers, and basically came to a lot of self-discovery. And then here's some famous people: Michelle Obama, the former First Lady, doing push-ups on TV. Ruth Bader Ginsburg at 87 doing doing planks with her trainer, and my somatic coach, and then the organizations. There are many of them. So what hoping you're taking away from this talk is that physical activity is way underutilized as a way to act powerfully.